began with a single handshake, clumsy, hesitant, and over in less than 3 seconds. Yet those few seconds were enough to set the sporting world ablaze. When Emma Raducanu and Jack Draper met at the net during the U.S. Open, the atmosphere shifted. Cameras zoomed in, fans froze the frame, and within hours the clip had gone viral. The handshake itself was nothing extraordinary. Draper extended his hand, Raducanu responded, and they exchanged the kind of polite smiles expected after a match. But there was something in the awkwardness, an almost teenage hesitation, that made people wonder. It wasn't the firm grip of two rivals or the detached courtesy of professionals. Instead, it carried an energy that fans quickly labeled romantic tension. Social media platforms exploded. TikTok users replayed the clip in slow motion, circling every glance, every twitch of the lip. Twitter, or X, as it is now branded, became a theater of speculation, with captions like, "That wasn't just a handshake," and "Look at the way she smiled back at him." The tabloids wasted no time, splashing headlines across their sports pages. Raducanu and Draper, more than just teammates. What struck observers most was Emma's expression. Known for her composure, she looked unusually flustered in that moment. Draper, tall and broad-shouldered, seemed almost shy, lowering his eyes before retreating quickly. To the average viewer, it was nothing. But to a nation hungry for drama and desperate for a new sporting fairy tale, it was the spark of a love story. And thus, a handshake, ordinary in the world of tennis, was transformed into the opening chapter of Britain's most talked-about rumor. What followed the handshake was nothing short of a digital wildfire. Within hours, hashtags like Show Raducanu Draper and her full British tennis love story were trending across Twitter and Instagram. Fan accounts began stitching together clips of Emma and Jack, slow-motion replays of that handshake, side-by-side photos of their smiles, even speculative edits showing the two walking hand-in-hand under the New York skyline. For a generation raised on reality television and influencer culture, the line between sport and romance blurred instantly. TikTok users layered the handshake footage with romantic pop songs, while YouTube commentators uploaded videos titled, "Are Emma and Jack Tennis's New Power Couple?" Some fans treated the entire moment as a secret confession caught on camera. Others insisted it was all nonsense, a creation of a gossip-hungry public. But as the views piled up, so did the headlines. Tabloid writers rushed to add fuel. "Emma blushes at Draper's touch," one screamed. Another teased, "From center court to candlelit dinner?" The Daily Mail even ran a poll, asking readers if they believed the pair were more than friends. Over 60% clicked yes. The frenzy wasn't limited to the press. Fellow tennis stars began to drop sly remarks in interviews. One joked that Draper seemed particularly motivated when Emma was around. Another hinted at a special bond between Britain's rising stars. Whether intended as playful banter or subtle confirmation, each comment acted like kerosene on the fire. Raducanu herself tried to appear indifferent, answering questions with her usual grace. Draper smiled politely, dodging inquiries with the skill of a seasoned professional. Yet for fans, their silence was louder than words, because in the world of modern sport, no denial is ever strong enough to kill a rumor once it takes root. The handshake had become more than a gesture. It was now a symbol of possibility, of curiosity, and of the tantalizing idea that Britain's brightest tennis hopes might also be Britain's newest golden couple. If the handshake was the spark, Jack Draper's past words about Emma Raducanu became the fuel that kept the rumor burning. Long before the viral clip, Draper had never hidden his admiration for Britain's 2021 U.S. Open champion. In interviews, he described her as an incredible competitor and a breath of fresh air for British tennis. Those were ordinary compliments in isolation. But in the feverish imagination of fans, they became declarations of something far deeper. One particular moment stood out. After Raducanu's gutsy comeback in a tight 3-set battle earlier in the season, Draper was quoted saying, "What makes Emma special isn't just her talent. It's her resilience, her ability to fight through tough moments when others would crumble." Admirers swooned. Social media accounts reposted the quote with captions like, "Sounds like a man in love," and "Jack sees what the rest of us see. Emma is more than a player, she's unforgettable." Even on the practice courts, whispers grew louder. Draper was often seen watching Emma's sessions from a distance, arms folded, occasionally clapping after a particularly sharp forehand winner. Cameras caught those glances, and once again fans went into overdrive. A still image of Draper smiling in Emma's direction circulated online with the headline, "Proud Boyfriend Energy." Of course, in reality, Draper may have simply been supportive as a fellow Brit, a teammate, and a professional who knew the weight of expectations. But speculation thrives where clarity is absent. The more Jack praised Emma, the more convinced the public became that this was no ordinary friendship. And then came the subtle gestures. The light pat on the back after a mixed practice, the warm smile exchanged across the player lounge. To the naked eye, harmless. But to millions of eager fans, every look and every word became evidence in the ever-growing case file of Emma and Jack. In sport, admiration is common. In love stories, it is the first chapter. With Draper's glowing words echoing in their minds, fans wondered if Emma Raducanu had just found her fiercest admirer not in the stands, but on the court beside her. If Jack Draper's words painted him as the admirer, Emma Raducanu's own comments on love and relationships only deepened the intrigue. In past interviews, Emma has spoken candidly about her approach to romance. Disciplined, cautious, and, as she once phrased it, guided by rules. For a 21-year-old under constant global scrutiny, those rules were her shield. She once admitted that balancing tennis and personal life was almost impossible. I don't really have time for dating. My focus has to be on the court. Yet in the same breath, she teased fans by adding, if someone really understands the pressures of this sport, then maybe it could work. Those words now seem prophetic. Who better to understand the demands of professional tennis than Jack Draper, a peer fighting the same battles, walking the same road? Emma has also been open about her independence. Trust is everything, she said in another interview. But so is freedom. I don't want to feel boxed in. Fans seized on that line, contrasting it with Draper's quiet, respectful personality. Jack, by reputation, is not the flamboyant showman, but the steady, loyal type, perhaps exactly the kind of figure Emma's rules allow. The media quickly drew their own maps between Emma's statements and Jack's presence. One tabloid asked, has Raducanu found the man who fits her criteria? Another speculated that her sudden smiles around Draper were not coincidental, but the signs of rules gently being rewritten. Even her social media behavior was placed under the microscope. A like on one of Draper's posts, a rare emoji on a training update, small gestures that would normally pass unnoticed. But with rumors in the air, each interaction became magnified into coded messages of affection. Emma has always been measured, almost guarded, when it comes to personal matters. But as whispers about Draper grew louder, the old rules she had once spoken of seemed to clash with the chemistry fans believed they saw on court. Was she standing firm by her boundaries, or was she quietly testing them with Britain's rising star by her side? Away from the flashing cameras and roaring crowds, the corridors of the U.S. Open tell a quieter story, one that fans rarely see, but love to imagine. According to whispers from insiders, Emma Raducanu and Jack Draper were spotted more than once sharing small, almost secret moments behind the curtain of competition. One locker room attendant claimed that after their handshake, the two crossed paths again in the players' lounge. Emma, still glowing from the adrenaline of the match, laughed at something Jack said under his breath. It wasn't the polite laugh of two colleagues. It was warm, genuine, and disarming. Draper, usually the picture of composure, looked down, trying to hide a smile that betrayed more than words ever could. Backstage cameras meant for broadcast B-roll caught glimpses of the pair walking side by side between practice courts. No dramatic gestures, no obvious romance, just the kind of casual closeness that leaves plenty of room for imagination. A brush of shoulders here, a shared bottle of water there. For most players, ordinary. For Raducanu and Draper, under the magnifying glass of a gossip-hungry public, extraordinary. The most tantalizing detail came from a volunteer who insisted that they saw Emma gently touch Draper's arm while saying goodbye. It was brief, the source recalled, but the way she looked at him, it didn't feel like just teammates. Whether truth or embellishment, the story spread like wildfire. In tennis, matches are won under the stadium lights. But in New York that week, the biggest drama seemed to unfold in the shadows, where Emma Raducanu and Jack Draper's rumored story was quietly, perhaps unknowingly, being written. Speculation about Emma Raducanu and Jack Draper quickly transcended gossip. It evolved into a powerful narrative. What if Britain's two brightest young tennis stars were not only teammates, but partners in life? The thought thrilled fans and marketers alike. A Raducanu-Draper pairing had all the ingredients of a sporting fairy tale. Both are young, attractive, and supremely talented. Both carry the burden of British tennis on their shoulders. Together they could form a partnership that reached beyond the court, a modern golden couple capable of dominating headlines as easily as tournaments. Sponsors and PR experts began to imagine the possibilities. Emma, already a global icon after her U.S. Open triumph, is the face of luxury brands and cutting-edge fashion. Draper, with his tall frame and quiet charisma, is seen as the gentleman of British tennis. As a duo, they would represent not just sport, but aspiration, a blend of glamour, resilience, and national pride. The British tabloids fed the fantasy relentlessly. One columnist wrote, "Federer and Mirka, Agassi and Groff. Every era has its couple that defines tennis. Could Raducanu and Draper be ours?" Headlines framed them as a dream team not just for Wimbledon, but for British identity itself. For fans, the allure was irresistible. To support Emma was to support Jack, and vice versa. Every victory, every smile, every small gesture seemed to carry a double meaning. Was Draper cheering for his colleague, or for someone more? Was Emma's laughter a sign of friendship, or the first chapter of romance? Whether real or imagined, the narrative had taken on a life of its own. In a world where image is as powerful as achievement, Emma Raducanu and Jack Draper had already become the couple Britain wanted, even before either of them had said a single word about it. As the whispers grew louder, both Emma Raducanu and Jack Draper faced the same inevitable question. Are you two more than just friends? Journalists, emboldened by weeks of speculation, began sliding the inquiry into post-match interviews. The responses were predictable, yet telling. Emma smiled politely, and brushing it aside with her trademark composure. "Jack's a great player and a good friend," she repeated, almost word for word, whenever pressed. Draper, for his part, laughed softly, shaking his head. "We're just focusing on tennis, that's all." On the surface, these were firm denials, but for fans, they weren't convincing. If anything, the carefully measured tone only added fuel. Why deny so cautiously if there was truly nothing to hide? The tabloids jumped on the ambiguity. One headline ran, "Raducanu refuses to rule out Draper romance." Another claimed, "Draper's nervous smile tells a different story." Every press conference became a battlefield where the unspoken tension between truth and rumor was dissected frame by frame. Even their body language came under scrutiny. At one press event, Emma and Jack were seated together. Though they avoided overt gestures, observers swore they noticed Draper leaning ever so slightly towards her, his knee angled in her direction. It was hardly scandalous, but in the theater of public imagination, it was damning evidence. The irony was sharp. The more they denied, the more people believed. In the silence between their words, fans heard confessions. In their nervous laughter, they saw hidden affection. And as the summer wore on, one truth became clear. Whether Emma and Jack were a couple or not, the story had already escaped their control. And so, the question lingers in the air like a final rally no one dares to strike. Are Emma Raducanu and Jack Draper simply Britain's brightest tennis hopes, united only by sport? Or are they quietly weaving a love story that beneath the unforgiving spotlight of the global stage? Every smile, every handshake, every whispered word between them is dissected, magnified, and replayed endlessly. Fans want answers. The press wants headlines, and sponsors dream of the ultimate golden couple. Yet Emma and Jack remain silent, offering nothing but polite denials and careful laughter. In the end, perhaps that silence is what keeps the fire alive, because as long as no one truly knows, the story never ends. And for the world of British tennis, that tantalizing mystery may be just as thrilling as any Grand Slam victory.